Welcome. Thank you for coming to our presentation. I'm Michael Russell. I am an operations manager with the Great Plains I-Corps Hub.
I am Jessica Vold. I am the faculty lead here at NDSU for I-Corps, and I'm housed in the College of Engineering and Mechanical Engineering.
So thanks for coming. So we're going to be talking about moving your ideas, research from the lab to the market through the I-Corps program. And so just a little bit of the agenda. So what we're going to go over today is talking about what I-Corps is, the importance of customer discovery, a little bit of an overview of the program, some of the opportunities beyond the I-Corps program, and then we'll have some time at the end for any questions that you might have. So to start, what is I-Corps? So it's a program through the National Science Foundation aimed to help researchers de-risk and get a stronger understanding of the economic impact of their research. And so it's an experiential learning program. For the most part, it's typically a 5-week fully online program with us. We run it through Zoom, but we try to make it as collaborative as possible by using breakout rooms, calling on people, just because we know that a Zoom call can get really tiring. And so we try to make it as interactive as possible.
And this was kind of NSF's attempt at ensuring that their return on investment on the research they're investing in was coming back to them. And they see a lot more success when they started this program that way.
And so kind of to start on why going through I-Corps is important. So one of the main reasons that startups fail is because they build something that nobody wants. And so through I-Corps, you're going out and doing customer discovery interviews and getting an understanding of what the needs are of your market or potential market so that you can pivot, adjust, or better align what you're working on with the actual needs that you're seeing. And so through I-Corps, you get a strong understanding of that potential market. You're learning the first steps of commercialization. You're testing your assumptions. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but you're going to be building hypotheses of our technology does this for these types of people. And so you're going to go out and confirm that they actually want you to do that. De-risks for future investments, helps you build your resume, and then you also grow your network through all these interviews. And so kind of the I-Corps process is try, fail, try again. You might fail again, but it's about that iterative trying again and failing. Something they talk a lot about in I-Corps is failing early so that you get an understanding of where you might need to pivot, just so that you're able to realign and you're not putting in effort way down the line when you're like, we put all this money and time into this project just to learn. Nobody cares. And so the program follows a lot of this. And so kind of the coursework flow for I-Corps is you come into the program and we give some supplementary readings so that you can get a brief introduction as to what are we going to be talking about in I-Corps. But then you go into the classroom, education, a little bit of lecture, and then you go out and do your customer discovery interviews. You come back and present what you learned, and then it kind of just reiterates itself. And so you're testing those hypotheses, getting feedback, and continuing to learn through it.
And I'd say in those presentations too, one of the really key benefits of I-Corps is you're getting an outside perspective on what you're hearing. So oftentimes you're going to take in information from an interview, and you might have a biased opinion about my technology is amazing. And as instructors, we're going to come in and look at what you're hearing in those interviews and say, well, is that really what your interviewee said to you? Or did they actually mean something else? So we're going to push you and give you that feedback to help you learn, right? To fail early. It makes you get to a point where you aren't doing something that somebody else actually wants. You're solving a problem for the other person.
Absolutely. And as a part of all of that, we also have office hours during the program where you can get that one-on-one time with the instructors to work through any of those problems, to have your assumptions tested, but just to have kind of that one person there to work through your project with you. And so what's covered in the curriculum? This is kind of a quick overview, and then I'll talk a little bit more about each of these. But customer discovery, so building your problem and customer hypotheses, value propositions, like how much are you benefiting people? Can you put an actual numerical value of some sort to be able to almost sell to people later to say, I improved your quality of life by 30% or saved you this much money or time. Customer segmentation, understanding who are the key stakeholders surrounding your technology, what are their roles, everything like that. And then ecosystem modeling, which is how's it all connected with all those customers or that segment. So these are some of the slides that we work through during the program with teams. And so, you're going to be building out your customer hypotheses as far as like, okay, this is our technology. Here are the use cases that we think we're going to be using. So best guess for idea, who are those potential customers that we think we need to talk to? What are their roles? And what is their authority? And so this is kind of the first step, is putting on paper what your assumptions are and then going and testing. And so this is an example of a team from UND that went through I-Corps, and their technology was a AI-based predator prevention system for chicken farmers. And so it was like a camera with AI that would identify if like a fox is approaching the chicken coop, and it would shoot like a little pellet or something at it. And so for them, it's a really cool technology. And so for them, they're building it out. Their best guess is scaring away the foxes, bears, anything like that. Customers would be people who own chickens. What are their roles of those customers? Decision makers. They're going to be the ones adopting that technology. And what is their authority? They're the owners. And so that's kind of building out that very first one. You're going to be doing similar with what the problem you're solving is. How does it impact the customers? Why would they want to adopt your change? And so this is an example for that same project, as far as just like building out their system is quiet, or it's going to bring them this value.
And a lot of this too, as you go through this, is understanding like what's important to that person. You might know exactly who's going to buy your technology and how they might use it. But if you're not making a big enough impact, where like, I'm only going to save one chicken a year, well, they might not care to invest in that. And so you're going to learn those metrics as you go through all of this and build that out throughout the course.
And so each week we want teams to be testing their hypothesis. So our product, defined product offering, helps these people solve this problem using your secret sauce, your technology. I will say, like, we don't want teams to really discuss their technology too much in the program, as a way to, one, protect your intellectual property, but two, you're not selling your technology to the people you're interviewing. You're interviewing them to get an understanding of their problem. And so that's one of the first things that we tell teams is day one, we do quick little like 2-minute elevator pitches of like, here's who we are, here's our technology, this is what we're doing. And then we say, all right, put your technology in a box, put it on a shelf. You're not talking about the technology anymore. You're talking about the problem that you're solving for people.
Yeah.
And so that's a really good way to get that qualitative data from your interviews and understanding those shark bite pains that their potential customers are facing.
I tell my teams, I'm teaching you how to listen to somebody else talk and take in that information. So that's how I like to describe it.
And so you're going to be building out customer segmentation. So all the various roles in that. So end users, decision makers, influencers, buyers, saboteurs. So like for that chicken farmer group, saboteurs could be fish and wildlife, because you probably can't have a lethal system to scare off predators, because a lot of them are probably protected. And so it's thinking about who's surrounding your technology and understanding what their roles are and whether that's going to help you or harm you. In the program, each week we want teams to be reporting who they're talking to so that we can give feedback and maybe notice trends. If you're only talking to a certain kind of customer, instructors might push you to expand your thinking to get an understanding of people beyond just this one specific person, because maybe there might be a need with that customer segment, but there might be a bigger need with a different one or something like that. And so we have our customer discovery log for you to be able to say, this was the role of that person, this is the kind of their title, are they a decision maker, and then what you learned. And also, did it validate or invalidate your hypothesis? Did all these interviews like make us go, well, we got to start over? Or are they saying, okay, we're onto something, we can keep going with this? Or I need to test more. And so trying to help you visualize that a little bit. And so next thing with those is figuring out how it all fits together with your ecosystem model. And so with identifying customers, you know, who's the customer, what's their job title, everything like that. And then how it fits together. So, you know, end users, decision makers, buyers, what are their titles? Are they, you know, users, influencers, decision makers? And then putting it all together with the information or like what their role is with each other or how they impact each other.
I want even how they interact together. Like, right, how does one part of an ecosystem influence another one? And I was like to tell my teams, or my ELs or my TLs, whatever you call them, that you're building out this ecosystem around this idea of commercialization. But as a researcher, it also helps you understand and think about, well, I never thought about going and applying for funding from this sector or this part of my ecosystem. Right? So it opens up your opportunities to help fund your own research, to develop new solutions that you could potentially commercialize yourself or license out to someone else to commercialize as well. So just, it helps you as a researcher as well if you're looking for other places for funding.
And so, like I said, you're identifying what their role is and what they do. And so while you build out your ecosystem model in the program, we're having you identify and assign what those roles are so that you can kind of see that web and how everybody works together. So you have that holistic view. This is an example of that team, the chicken team's like
This one.
fully built out ecosystem model. And they went through the national I-Corps program, which is quite a bit more intense than our regional one. And I'll talk a little bit more about nationals. But as you can see, they get really complex and you can see all the different people that are a part of it. It's probably a little hard to see from a distance, but you kind of get the sense with all the arrows and different boxes as far as flow of information, who the users are.
And it's really interesting to see like teams when they first start, they think this ecosystem is really small. It's my customer, it's me, and maybe like my suppliers for my technology. And then as we start pushing them as instructors, all of a sudden it becomes this really big map that's really complex. And they've put things on here they never even thought about. And like, oh, well, actually this regulating body over here, like if I don't make them happy, I can't do my technology at all or sell it at all. And so there's a lot of teams that have those kind of moments like, oh, this is what I actually have to do to get to the end goal.
And those moments are kind of the key of what we're looking for in the program, is for you to find those things that you never even thought about through these interviews. And so building on between who people are is actually being able to put that number and that benefit behind what you're doing for people. And so customer benefits is you're identifying what are kind of the attributes of your technology, what do they do for the customer, and is there a stakeholder impact, why do they care, what value is created. And then further into that, this is for that last team, system monitors with AI. So you don't have to be watching all the time. You don't have to have a guard dog or something, or scares the predators away. Crafting strong questions, sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. I was going into value proposition mentally, but we'll talk a little bit.
Those comes first.
We'll do the crafting strong questions first. A part of the program too is understanding how to do interviews and how to talk to people in a way that you're going to get their honest feedback for the problems they're facing. You don't want to be asking leading questions, but you also don't want to ask yes or no questions where people don't continue on. And so a part of the program is our instructors trying to help you learn, like, how can we get good qualitative data that we can use as a part of our project?
And how can you do it efficiently? How can I ask you 5 questions that get you telling all these stories as opposed to having to ask 40 or 50 questions to get to the same information? And so there's an art to it. So we'll walk through all those questions and help you craft them as well throughout the program.
Like one part of the program is the instructors put up questions on the screen, and it's like, okay, let's dissect this and see what are the good parts and the bad parts of this question to see how you can make better ones yourself.
And how would you make it better?
Yeah.
We like to ask you too is like, okay, make this question better. How would you ask it now? And then that can help you kind of think through the questions you're going to ask, or even just modifying the questions you've already had listed out.
And so this is an example of some of their questions, like, how do you scare away predators from your farm now? What technologies do you utilize? And it's not a question like, are predators a problem at your farm? Or that kind of stuff. And so just getting an understanding of what they're currently doing, what problems they're facing. Question development, it's more of the, what are you trying to solve with your hypothesis? Value proposition was where I was going a little bit earlier, but it is that identifying the exact value that you bring to your end user, saboteur, whoever it is that's in your ecosystem, whatever role they are, just being able to put numbers to it. And that's kind of the part of where we say I-Corps helps de-risk you for future investments. Investors want to know the impact that you're having. And so being able to say, like, we can save these people 30% money or time or whatever, you're going to say, okay, I'm more willing to give money towards that or something along those lines. And so being able to actually put value behind it is really important.
And we'll share with you throughout the process too, like examples of this that we've kind of experienced in our own work, in our own backgrounds. I think those examples also kind of help put it in perspective what we're looking for. And they're very tangible, real life examples that you can think about.
Absolutely. And so for the chicken farm ones here, well, it's pretty easy in that sense, as far as like fewer livestock are being injured by animals. Or for this team, they learned that green muscle disease is an issue. Just by having scared chicken, they're going to be flapping, which actually hurts like the end product of chicken. And so it's not about just them not getting killed by predators, it's about not even being scared by predators.
Which is not something they thought of going into it. So they learned that throughout their.
And so testable hypotheses too, being able to, part of it is assign a number that you think that your technology benefits people buy, and then go test that. Because you might not know exactly how much it's going to be, but you can disprove a number that you decide on, if that makes sense. Okay, so now a little bit more about what to expect from our regional I-Corps program. And so, like I said, it's on Zoom. Typically teams, and I'll talk about what a team is made up of, it's usually 3 to 5 members, but teams are going to be the most successful if every member of the team is a part of every cohort. It's more engaging, you're going to be able to work together and collaborate. Like I said, it's Zoom, but we still try making it as collaborative as possible. So we'll put your team in a breakout room to work through some of this together, and then our instructors will jump through those rooms with you. And so like when it's just one like student or entrepreneurial lead in a room by themselves, they just don't get as much out of it. And so by having your whole team present, you're going to get a lot out of it. Complete all homework as assigned. And so those previous slides that we went through as far as building out your customer segments, we'll go through those during workshops on the Zoom calls, but then we want you to submit them after class so that the instructors can review them, give you feedback, kind of help you in that sense, as like your customer discovery log, just so that we can see who are you talking to. Just giving the instructors kind of that insight into what you're doing. 20 plus customer discovery interviews. So 20 interviews is kind of the minimum that we want teams to reach in the program. And so over 5 weeks, we say do about 5 interviews a week, because when it's week 4 and you're sitting at 7 interviews, those 13 are daunting. It's a lot of people to reach out to. In the very first session, we actually tell teams to put together a list of 50 people to reach out to and do it. And then you come back and say, only 5 people responded, or I only got 5 interviews lined up from this. And it's like, okay, so that's a 10% success rate. Now, can we improve your cold open or how you reach out to people? Or you're gonna have to reach out to a lot more people to be able to reach 20 interviews.
And this is prepping also for like the national program, which is even more intense than this. So like we're just kind of slowly preparing you to get into that national cohort as well, if that's something you desire.
And so regionals, it's 20 interviews. The national program is 100 interviews, which is a huge leap.
And you only get 2 more weeks.
7 weeks with 100
weeks.
interviews.
Very, very tight.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a couple slides here.
Attend the office hours with the instructors. You're going to get a lot out of that. You're going to be able to walk through any questions you have, anything like that. Presenting your findings. Last 3 weeks of the program, each like session 3, 4, and 5, you're presenting your findings. Ideally by session 3, you've done 10 interviews, so you're able to talk about those. And then by 4, it's 15, and you're like, okay, here's how we pivoted now. Supporting peers with feedback. That's one of my favorite parts about I-Corps is you'll see a team that's struggling to get interviews, or they're talking about their customers and they're just not sure where their segment is. And the room will chip in. Our instructors do a really good job of leaning the other participants to say, okay, we need somebody who is a lawyer. Does anybody have a connection with a lawyer that this team can reach out to interview about our project?
Can you give them a warm lead as opposed to a cold for that particular interview? And we've even had teams chime in. There's like, well, have you thought about this sector? Like maybe you're working on things in healthcare, but have you thought about the stay-at-home mom and what she does with her kids? Like, and so those types of things just spark more ideas and more thinking. And those 20 interviews seems daunting. Once like other like teams start to jump in, it becomes a lot less daunting to get to that 20 interview count.
And we use NovoEd as our learning management system for I-Corps, and so it's similar to Blackboard, but it has built-in discussion forums where like we put all the entrepreneurial leads are in a discussion forum, so they can ask each other questions if they want to interact, anything like that. And so it's a good way to stay organized with Novo. And then we really recommend committing 8 to 12 hours a week for the program. It kind of varies depending on the role that you are. Typically, and I'll talk about each participant, but like usually the entrepreneurial lead, who's typically the student in the program, spearhead the team. They're the ones putting in the most work. And so that 8 to 12, I would say, is most accurate for the entrepreneurial lead.
Yeah.
For the other members of the team, I would say it's closer to 5 hours a week, but it could be more or less depending on how engaged you are. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So talking a little bit more about what those program outcomes are. So you're doing customer discovery interviews, you're getting an understanding of the market, getting context about the opportunities surrounding your research, your technology, what you're hopefully trying to bring to market someday. Objectives, you're defining the project, elevating the status quo, how do we change it, designing good value propositions, and then determining is this something that we should continue to pursue? Do we need to pivot? Or maybe there isn't a market that we found yet, or maybe you need to go through I-Corps again. You need to talk to more people. But really it's refining, strengthening your business model to explore commercialization and increase your chances of funding. So speaking of funding, at NDSU, we have quite a few opportunities to us, which is fantastic. So in the regional program, for us at NDSU, the entrepreneurial lead automatically gets a $1,000 stipend. International students sometimes have to work with the ISSAS office, I believe that's the acronym, just to make sure that they're not going over what their hours are, but we connect them to make sure that we take care of that. But so you get up to $1,000 stipend as a participant, but then there's also travel reimbursement to be able to go out and do those interviews. So if there's like a conference that your team wants to go to find people in the industry, we can pay those conference fees, the hotel, the travel, to get you there so that you can interview those people and get an understanding of what their needs are. And conferences are probably the best way to knock out interviews.
Oh, absolutely. Any trade show or conference. Because people that care about what you're doing are there and you can go and talk to them. I mean,
And
it
that's
hasn't
what
happened yet, but I bet you there's a team at some point that will get all 20 interviews by going to one conference.
I believe it. Well, and at nationals, so nationals is those 100 interviews.
Yeah.
And that's what you see teams doing is they know months ahead of time that they're going to be participating in this national program. And so they start to do their research ahead of time and start scheduling. I'm going to go to this conference during these 7 weeks.
And if that trade show or conference falls like the week after our 5-week regional cohort ends, we can still like try and help support that. So
Yes.
you can finish out those 20 interviews because we want you to get to that 20+ interviews. So if you end at like 15, we're going to try and still support you through those last 5 because we
Yeah.
want you to finish it so that you are eligible for that national program.
It's not over if you
No.
don't make it to that number. We want to work with you. We want to help you be successful. And I believe our actual like cutoff for a team as they go through the program is like they can use that travel for up to a year after, but it gets a little
Technically.
Technically, don't do it. Don't do it.
We want to advertise it a lot, but technically, yes.
If needed, but you ideally want you to do it during the program so you can get that feedback. But at NDSU, we have more funds available. And so through our research and creative activities office, they put us a couple of funds aside for us. So we have the NDSU MVP fund, which is a fund that teams can get up to $10,000 to help develop their minimal viable product. I will say with this one, you have to be very like NDSU affiliated, like university owned IP
Yes.
to be able to qualify for that. But that is something that is available to teams that go through our program. They also set aside additional participant support for the technical leads for teams. And technical leads are often the PIs or the faculty advisors for the student who's the entrepreneurial. And then we also have on our website a few other funding opportunities for like some of our South Dakota schools. These are kind of the main ones for NDSU. So I said I was gonna talk a little bit more about teams. So typically a team is 3 to 5 members with at least one of each of these.
Yeah.
And so kind of the key member of the team, I mean, they're all pretty key, but the entrepreneurial lead is the one who's going to be spearheading the charge for that team. They're going to be doing a majority of those interviews. They're going to be speaking on behalf of the team during the cohorts. If the technical lead starts kind of talking over their EL, an instructor will cut you off and say, we want the student to talk.
I would literally say, you're not the EL. I'm going to ask you to stop talking and have the EL talk. So, and I think a big part of that too, right, is we want, as academic institutions, we want to train our students to go out and be successful. And we really do focus on training that student while they're doing their research, but we're also supporting you as the TL. So you are learning, but we really want to focus on that EL doing the work and learning the process.
And I will say too, a lot of times that student is probably going to be a little bit more willing to stray from what your original
Yes.
intended path for your research was, which might be to the TL's like dismay as far as being like, we should really pivot, but it's good to follow that data or follow kind of what those customer segments are, just to explore it and learn. And so that's the entrepreneurial lead. It's typically a graduate student, postdoc, PhD student. We do allow some undergrad students as well. Just for the national program, they typically won't accept a team that has an undergrad student as the EL. They need to be graduate level.
They can work with undergrads, but the grad student has to be the one that's in the EL role
Yeah.
going through the program. So it's they're a little more particular about that than we are.
So technical lead is typically faculty or that student's advisor. That's usually the PI on the research on the project. And then the third member is the industry mentor, who is usually the hardest to find for a team. But this is somebody who has that industry experience and can serve as kind of that third party, non-biased, outside voice to say like, to challenge your assumptions, to say like, they're not as in the technology as you are, to be able to say like, maybe you should look at this other customer segment, or they might have connections for you to be able to go out and interview.
And I
So
would say, if you don't have an industry mentor identified, that's okay. Still apply to the program with an EL and a TL. And you can work with our team to find an industry mentor. We can help you find them. And I think honestly, sometimes it works better if we assign you an industry mentor because they truly are a third party. They're not, they maybe don't know you yet. They know the space you're in, and they understand kind of that sector, but it's a truly unbiased opinion that's just there to help you succeed. And they really do want you to succeed. They're not going to sabotage what you're doing in any way. Make sure of that.
we almost call them like an extension of the teaching team because they really are there to help you learn. In our regional program, we can be a little bit flexible if like the industry mentor is somewhat connected to your technology.
Yes.
But like if you're interested in the national program, they will turn you away if your IM looks like they're going to be like a future part of the company. Like they want that person to be independent, to give you the best unbiased feedback as possible. And so that's just something to keep in mind. And we have seen teams with 2 entrepreneurial leads or something like that. And so that's definitely an option. So the national program is, like we said, a much bigger step from our regional program. So to qualify for nationals, she's gone through a national program, so
Yes.
she'll talk a little bit about it. But to get in, it requires NSF lineage. And so what that means is you can either go through a regional I-Corps program, so our program, and do your 20 interviews and have that traditional team makeup and university-owned IP. That's kind of the like asterisk. Is you
Yes.
have to have university-owned IP on your project, or you can have previously received NSF funding for that project to be able to qualify just to go to nationals without regional, but they really prefer that you've gone through regionals.
And they are very, very particular. Like if you are coming into it having not gone through the regional, if that lineage from NSF is not directly what you're coming through with, they won't put you through the program. They're really picky about that. So
There's a very high demand for nationals now,
yes,
which is like good and bad because it's a little bit harder to get into.
So I'd say even if you're going through with something that has been funded by NSF, still go through the regional program first because your application is just that much stronger. You've come through multiple avenues now through NSF. So
And so with nationals, you receive $50,000 to be used towards your project, customer discovery, all of that. If you probably know.
yeah, so you can use it for a lot of different things. You can pay your graduate student the stipend for doing the program. So I went through it in 2016 with Chad Olvin and his business partner, Corey Krecha as well. He was our industry mentor. And so like my salary as the student, I was graduate at that time. So I was just a researcher at the university. My salary was paid for through that program. You can use it for travel. You can use it to apply for, go to conferences, trade shows, right? There are some stipulations that it has to be like, you have to show that it's associated with what you're doing. And then if when you're done with the 7-week program and you have funds left over, they will allow you to use a very small portion of it to work on an MVP as well. So once you've gone through the program, show you have a solution to something that people care about, you could use a little bit of it to create an MVP. But you really have to show NSF that it is an MVP that's going out to customers to show that you do have a solution to this particular problem. So, and honestly now, because this program is all online as well, or remote, you're not using any of that $50,000 to travel to the actual program. So when I went through it, we had to pay for our travel for all 3 of us to get out to the program on the East Coast, stay in a hotel for 3 days, come back to Fargo, do a bunch of interviews, travel around the country with funding, and then have funds again to go back out to the East Coast for the closing. Now, all of that funding, all 50,000, you have to do your customer discovery. So get a little bit more breathing room in terms of what you can spend now through the program.
And they run, I believe, 12 cohorts per year, so about 3 per semester. And there's 24 teams in each national cohort. So you're really going to be working and like networking a bit with people from all over the country. It's definitely like pretty prestigious, and especially with
Very cool.
the demand that it has now, like you're going to be rubbing shoulders with some pretty people. And some pretty dedicated people too to their projects. Because
Yes.
long course program, it's 7 weeks, and teams, especially the entrepreneurial leads, should expect to spend at least 20 hours a week on this. To reach 100 interviews in 7 weeks, it's a big lift. Like it's.
I mean, honestly, 20 hours a week is, I think, underestimating
Okay.
that work. Like I that's all I did full time for 7 weeks was work on I did was making cold calls, sending emails, doing interviews, going and talking to customers. When you think about the interviews, we always tell you to plan for 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, because you want to be respectful of someone's time. I can honestly say of the 120 interviews I probably did, most of them were probably closer to 30 minutes to an hour. Because once you get that person talking, they're like, oh, I still have time. Let's just keep talking. Let's talk about these other things. And that's in that extra time. That's when you start hearing things. It's like, oh, this really is a problem for them. And maybe if I do these tweaks to my technology, I can really help alleviate their problem. If they have this, 30 other companies around them probably also have the same problem. So, so it's really intense, but it's mostly on the EO, right? The industry mentor, they probably spend less time per week. They're kind of in a support role, but you have to participate still.
And like you said, like in the interviews, if you're able to get somebody talking, like people like to talk about themselves, especially the problems they're facing. And so if you're able to get them going, you're just going to get so much more out of it.
Which is also a struggle for us on our end, because as researchers, we want to talk about what we're doing. And we're going to come into this program, we're going to tell you after that first week, you don't get to talk about what you do. You have to sit and listen and ask questions and think about in the back of your mind, oh, how can I actually use my technology for this? Or how might someone actually use technology that I haven't thought about as well? Kind of opens up doors for, it's not just Avenue A that I'm going to go down. Maybe it's Avenue A, B, C, D that can use this technology. So.
And you're also building out your full business model canvas.
Yes.
With those 100+ interviews. In the regional program, you're focusing on that customer segmentation, value proposition, whereas with the national program, you're filling it all out.
So this is regional here, value proposition, customer segments, and that's kind of it, right?
Maybe customer relationships.
Maybe a little bit of this, some of our teams touch on this, but that's it in those 20 interviews. For nationals, it's the entire thing. This entire canvas will be filled out when you're done.
And so you get into those really kind of nitty-gritty, more important things as far as what is your cost structure, what is your revenue stream, as far as like if you're actually fully building out a business. And so regionals is a good way to kind of get your feet wet and start understanding those customers.
And then when you think about 100 interviews cast across this entire canvas, it's really not that many in each one of these boxes when it comes down to it. So it is a little more palatable when you break it down. It's just that 100 numbers seems really daunting in 7 weeks, but it's worth every minute you spend on it. So.
And then we recognize too, following our regional program, nationals isn't the right route for everybody, but I-Corps, especially the regional program, can be a really good resume builder for other funding avenues and funding opportunities. So SBIR, TTR, I'll let you talk a little bit.
Yep. So NSF has this, and we call it NSF because this is an NSF program, but there are other government agencies that also have SBIR and STTR funding. And one of the big things with this, so these grants are looking at how does NSF or how does that agency help propel commercialization of technology, transferred out of an academic lab and into something that is contributing to society and commercialized. And so a big part of that application is showing that you understand there's a problem in the world that has to be solved. This is the ecosystem, and these are all the players in that sector. And this is how your technology fits into that ecosystem and is a solution to that particular problem, which if you don't go through the I-Corps process, for a lot of researchers is very hard to understand. And that's kind of what we're helping you to kind of see in this program. So it's a very natural fit to go into SBIR. So SBIR is Small Business Innovation Research funding. So that would be, let's say you do commercialize something out of your research here at NDSU and you go and start your own business, you can get funding at that small business to keep doing some of the foundational research to commercialize your solution out into the world. And you can do that just as your own small business entity. You don't have to have any other partners in that if you don't want them. You can have partners, but you don't have to. STTR is tech transfer. I forget what it stands for now.
I can Google it quick, but.
Basically, it involves, there's tech transfer, that's what the TT stands for. But in that case, you actually have to have an academic partner. So you have to have a university that you're partnering with along with that small business. And you're transferring directly technology from that academic institution into the small business. And then the two of you will partner together. And there's some regulations in that RFP in terms of how much of the budget can go to each of those entities. It's very strict on what can go to each one of them.
You're right, it's small business tech transfer. Doesn't fit
it's
STTR,
tech
but
transfer.
it is small business tech.
That's why I can never remember it.
Because the acronym's not.
No, it doesn't make any, there's no B and what's the TR part?
Transfer?
It's not just NSF that has them, it's other ones of them. I'll talk through all these
That's
things
okay.
already, but it's okay. There are 3 phases to the SBIR STTR program. There's a phase 0 that you can start with. NDSU does not have a phase 0, but we partner with UND for that phase 0. So UND does have that. You probably actually get emails about that frequently in your NDSU email. So if you are interested in that, you could start going through that phase 0 as well. So, and really they're looking to help develop and validate your technology, but they want to see that you already understand the commercial potential from that particular technology before you do it. And we're actually like running out of time. How did this happen? I don't know. This is totally
Well, here's
fine.
our acronyms that we should have just jumped forward to.
It's Friday, right? Before school starts. So these are actually all the agencies that do have SBR, STTR programs. And while you might go through I-Corps, which is through NSF, there are other I-Corps programs as well. NSF is by far the largest of them. Each one of these agencies would recognize your NSF I-Corps as part of that commercialization development. So it could feed into any one of those agencies as well. So part of those key elements for your SBR proposal is connecting to those commercialization topics. So that's what we're teaching within our program. If you actually look at the RFP, we're looking at things, the technical objectives, we're thinking about commercial viability. That's what you're looking for through I-Corps, helping validate that commercial viability. The market opportunity, understanding what is the ecosystem, how big is it, what's the potential for profit and revenue and that type of thing, and realistically, how much of the market can you take? And so you'll look at those things in the national program that our regional program is helping prepare you for. You're also going to have to define things like the customer, the value proposition, and the opportunity. All 3 of those things is exactly what we're looking at in the regional program itself. And then you'll develop it even further if you go through that national program. So kind of thinking about if it's right for you right at the very end of it. If you're looking for something like money just to tinker in your lab, just to figure out what can I learn, what discoveries can I make, that's probably not the right track for you. If you're looking to make incremental changes, okay, and there's already a market that exists for this product, there's already solutions out there, SBIR, STTR probably isn't right for you. So NSF and any of those other agencies that have these programs are think about, okay, I have an unproven innovation, but I know there's a problem and a solution from this innovation. How do I get it out to market? How do I make it better and deliver that to the customer segment? And so that's kind of really what they're looking for, and then it might be a right fit for you. In terms of like kind of thinking about like benefits to faculty, if you're not looking to go start your own business, which honestly a lot of us probably aren't, but we don't want to spend time doing research on something that just is going to go nowhere, that no one's going to see the light after I'm done with it in my lab. And I-Corps kind of helps you think about that, helps you think about if I create this technology, who's going to use it or where might it have potential? And when we think about kind of a traditional NSF like proposal, your intellectual merit and your broader impacts, that's exactly what I-Corps is talking about. Who's impacted? How are they impacted? And what is my technology, my research going to do for society in the end? And so it'll help kind of change the way you think about those things as you write those statements in your proposal. So it'll help you just generate stronger, more competitive proposals in the end if you've gone through the program. Even if you don't go through the program with that particular technology, it just helps you think about that in the end. So why I-Corps?
Yes, so kind of to bring it all together, promotion, tenure. And
I think the biggest thing with that is part of your PTV is creative activities. It's making an impact on society. And so you can point to I-Corps in those things. It is a creative activity. It can go into your research portion of your portfolio. And so it does have some merit in terms of your promotion and evaluation here at NDSU. And it also can show in terms of service, working with the community outside of NDSU, you can build those relationships with industries that maybe you bring in some external funding to do a project with an industry. And you've made that connection now through I-Corps because you've thought about where else might this technology get used. So
As we've already said, you're de-risking your research. You're getting an understanding of who it impacts, why, what they need, everything like that. And so people are going to be more willing to put money into something that has that data, that qualitative data to back it up. And with that data, you're able to fail early, pivot, make adjustments so that it impacts the actual people that you're developing an empathetic mindset. You're listening. It's really building those listening skills to hear the problems people are having and then being able to realign your research or adjust it so that it hits those needs.
I would say it's even like just like generally out in society, as you listen to like other people talk about their days, like even just like not I'm gonna say eavesdropping, but if you overhear a conversation from somebody, it kind of gets you thinking about, oh, this person really like this was a big problem for them. Could I develop something that could prevent that problem for them in the future and other people that have that problem as well? So it's just a different mindset that you have after the program.
Good resume builder too. You've done the research as you apply for other grants. The NSF, I think, really likes to see that you're committing to their own programs. And so if they can see that you're using their programs to further your research, they want to also further that research too.
It also shows that you're willing to take in feedback from other places and make changes that are relevant to other people. And so it's still outside of NSF as well. That's a really good thing to show.
And you're building those problem solving skills. And I think that's, just upcoming cohorts. So our regional program hosted by the Hub is starting this October. The application deadline is the last Friday of September.
Yep.
So you have about a month for that. And that's the Hub hosted one. And we're aiming to have about 15 teams in that cohort. And that'll run through, I think, the week before Thanksgiving in November. And so that's one opportunity. We also have University of Wyoming and University of Nebraska Omaha are also hosting ones. So if these dates don't work for you for the Hub one, you could look at those ones as well.
And we'll have more in the spring and next summer as well. So if you do want to do a Hub hosted one, if this fall doesn't work, you could look at even like next summer. Summer might be a little bit easier as well if you
We'll have lots of
tied up in them.
opportunities. And so if you're interested in applying, our I-Corps website has it. The handouts on the tables should have those URLs for you. If you have any questions, they also should have our info at email. And that's my email. So I'm the one that watches that. So you'll get a response from me pretty quick if you do have questions. And with that, do you have any questions for now? I think we ran 3 minutes over, so sorry. Yes.
Just again, Michael, thank you really very, very much. So I exactly came here with these expectations, what you just discussed. So thank you. So you covered most of the areas that is I had like confusion and doubt. And I now have like at least 20 questions just on this specific presentation, which I probably shouldn't ask for the sake of time, but I can communicate with Michael or Jessica, you with those specific things.
The time just to grab coffee in the union too, the 3 of us, and just talk through it too.
Oh, that will be so perfect. That will help me.
You know where to find
I
it.
know where it is and I know where Michael. So Jessica, I just want to ask you the one very, very overarching question. And that actually this will sound a bit selfish because that is why our previous attempt failed. And is there anything that you can help out to solve this? The question is the coordination between the TL and the EL. The industry mentor is kind of fantastic. I mean, you are already providing an industry mentor. We can bring someone with an industry mentor, and most of the industry mentors kind of dedicated, or at least partially dedicated. The TLs are extremely busy people in the world, and this is a good fortune to have someone like Jessica did. I mean, when you were in the cohort to call 150 customers. So a TL usually do not, I mean, that level of dedication, it's very rare to come by.
Extremely rare. Like most often it's the EL. So it's the student that's gone through the program that's doing all of that work.
Right.
And it's kind of it's on the student to include the TL and include the industry mentor and inviting them to that work. And I would say it's the role of the TL and the IM to make sure that the EL has enough contacts to get to that customer interview.
And that is exactly my question where it is coming to me, that finding that level of EL dedication is sometimes the challenge. And it is very rare to have a EL with that level of dedication, given, not blaming anyone, but given that they are already occupied, right, with their courses, research, this and that. So my question to you is, can I-Corp help to connect ELs with the
ELs?
TL of different areas, or do they have to come from the same lab?
That's like,
Honestly, no. Like, so for a team to truly be successful, the EL should already be working on that technology.
Okay,
So if you want to go through I-Core, it should be your grad student
correct.
that is the EL because they're already familiar with that
Yeah,
technology. And then it's us as the TLs to allow them the time and space to go through the program. So it's alleviating other duties that they might have to making sure that they're not a TA that semester. And also knowing that they're going to get some stipend from the program, even if it's not a lot, but it's something to help compensate their time. So it really is on us to make sure that students,
combination.
that we give them the time and space
Understood.
to do that.
Understood. But if you have an EL who is super interested to do something,
Yeah.
he is ebullient and like bubbling with trying to do something, but he doesn't have an idea. And similarly, a TL doesn't have an idea to move forward. And also the TL has bunch of working projects. Is it doable that with your help, of course, from the,
I mean,
connect these two, get this guy experienced into that particular project, bring him.
seen some stuff like that from some
know.
other institutions
Yeah.
where it's like an MBA student
Yeah.
who really wants to get experience with almost building a business, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And typically, I-Core is honestly more aimed at STEM students, less of MBA students, so more of those
Right.
graduate students who are in the labs. And I know like at regionals, we can be a little bit more flexible, but at the national level, I think they would push away like a business student. They want an
A STEM.
engineering STEM student, which is frustrating on our end, but unfortunately, like nationals is.
I think for you as a TL, it's beneficial to have an EL that's already part of the project because you won't have to spend as much time training the EL on what it is you're doing so that they have high enough level of understanding of what you're doing to go and make the right contacts for customer interviews. Because if they don't know anything about what you're doing, they can't develop the questions, they can't develop the hypotheses, and so like it wouldn't get you the right data in the end. But yeah, we have seen a few non-traditional teams come through and it can work.
And are you under,
Yeah.
are you mechanical or are you?
We are in the science, seek knowledge of the cat.
I can say, I wonder if there's like a way that we could work with like your dean or whoever's.
I feel like, for example, there is ELs. I mean, not an EL, a graduate student, super interested in to do something. So is there someone very super interested to do something or super not interested to do something? It is his project, but he's not interested to go in this way. Then we fall into that gap. That exactly happened last time for our group, that our essentially the entire thing fell apart. So if anything, you guys come up with an idea that can help us, that will.
Let's talk more about this too and
Yeah.
kind of figure out what this could look like. I know, like if there's a way, I don't know if there's like a way to hire a graduate student under your team that is more dedicated to something like this, or, but I think funding is kind of the hardest thing.
Yes.
So it's like, that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the amazing presentation. I've really learned a lot about this. As international student, PhD students, I already have like 20 hours a week. But then I'm very interested in this and I'm ready to work on that. I'm wondering how it's going to be for me since I already have 20 hours and I cannot,
Yeah.
according to the rules, I cannot work more than that. How do you?
We would probably have you connect with Michelle, who's our program manager, who kind of runs the budget, and then she would sit down with you in the international students office to kind of figure out what that would look like.
Yeah.
Because you do have to, unfortunately, like you do have to follow those hours. And so whether that looks like maybe waiting until the summer, where I think you can do 40 hours if I'm correct, and so maybe that could be a part of it, or if you're able to work
But
with.
do you have the programs like during the summer, like summer break?
We have them
Oh,
kind of
yes.
all over.
Yeah, we
the-
run them, yep, we run them year round. The other thing you can do, so if you have a faculty member that you're working under, if they say your job duties in those 20 hours of your week, part of it is I-Core, the I-Core work can fall into those 20 hours. So it's all about how they assign your duties in those 20 hours. Now, if you're working 20 hours like in an on-campus job, that's a different discussion. But if it's like 20 hours of research, there are ways to work the I-Core into those research hours. That is your 20 hours for the week. But I think talking with Michelle would be really beneficial.
Mhm.
So my second question is about the team members. For instance, maybe I'm working on something about car park stuff, technology for car parks, where literally like transportation students, but I will need someone from a programming background or computer science sort of, and I literally don't know anybody. Do you or can you assist in getting that? I mean, those people, or maybe I will let you know that I need this particular person with this background. You assist in getting that team members who might be interested in teaming up with me.
We can definitely use our network to try to connect you with people, whether that's just like maybe a faculty member on campus that we think would be a good person to introduce you to, because maybe they have a student that could be that part of the team, or maybe that faculty member would be interested in participating in it with you.
Are you in transportation and logistics?
Right.
I'm gathering, okay. And you would fall into the STEM fields for I-Core as well. So we could help, like, just within our network, figure out who might help you, or even like helping you find an IM that could help you. And that IM could be a faculty member on campus or on a different campus as well. I shouldn't just say NDSU, but on any of our campuses.
But yeah, we'll try, like, we'll see teams apply for the program that are like, we're missing this member and we're trying to still build it out. And like, kind of the key is apply early enough before the deadline of the cohort you want to be in, or be okay with maybe not being accepted into this cohort, but let's work together so that you're ready for the next one. And then we can work with you, have your team, and then I can just accept you. So it's not like, it's just like, we're really happy to work with you and try to help you build and be successful in the program. It's kind of a rolling application in that sense. Like, we get a team that applies that has like all the members and they're ready, we'll be like, yes, you're in. But then if a team isn't ready, we're like, okay, how can we make you ready? And so we want to help.
I guess you have more session on the 5th of September.
Yes,